Welcome in and welcome back to the channel, everybody. Joey here with you today, and we are going to preview the Steelers contest against the Cleveland Browns this Sunday in Cleveland. And the Steelers have a chance to clinch their first AFC North title since the 2020 season, but they may not even have to play a snap on Sunday before they get the good news that they have clinched. We'll get into the top of the show. We're going to talk about the Ravens and the Packers. Their game on Saturday night. I'm recording this Friday evening. You're probably seeing this Friday evening, Friday night. And this game against the Packers for the Ravens, it's do or die, and it is without Lamar Jackson, who's dealing with a back injury. And there's all kinds of weird articles out of the Baltimore Sun saying that Lamar, he wants to play in Miami, he wants to play in Las Vegas. It seems like him and the Ravens are at a crossroads, and that relationship with John Harbaugh is shot. And it certainly kind of looks that way. Jack and I have kind of been hinting at that throughout the season. It just seems like the Ravens are an all-time bad vibes team, season from hell for them. And they were the Super Bowl favorites going into this year. And they are going to have a chance to not even make the playoffs before week 18. It's going to be over for them. It could very well be. So no Lamar Jackson. It's going to be former Pro Bowler Snoop Huntley. So if you take anything into Pro Bowls, if you needed any more, Snoop Huntley has become the poster child for, Pro Bowls. People use that as kind of like an accolade, when you're talking about comparing people all the time, they're like, oh, he has 3 Pro Bowls, 2 All Pros. I'm all for not saying Pro Bowls anymore. I don't mention Pro Bowls as a source of like, hey, this is why this guy's better, because it's a popularity contest. Snoop Huntley, shout out Snoop Huntley. He was like the 5th alternate that year. No shade to him, but he's going to go down as like the Pro Bowler of all time. But on the other side for the Green Bay Packers, Malik Willis is going to play. Jordan Love's still dealing with that concussion. He didn't clear protocol fully. It's going to be the one, the only Steelers by Joey legend, Malik Willis. How about Malik Willis with a chance to send the Steelers to the playoffs? Malik Willis with a chance to clinch the division for the Steelers for the first time in 5 years? Who could have predicted that? Guys, if you followed me for a long time over on Instagram and Twitter in particular, I was very high on Malik Willis coming out. He was who I wanted the Steelers to take. And I did take the L on that. Didn't look good for a couple of years. As bad as who we picked didn't pan out. Malik Willis certainly didn't pan out, never got a shot. He's looked good in relief a couple times in Green Bay. And if he plays good in this one and, gets the Steelers their first division title, he indirectly, of course, he's going to be a free agent this year. So, you're not going to be the Steelers quarterback. I mean, I hope not. But a little bit of an interesting kink in that game for Malik Willis. He's got a chance to really make some money in the offseason. So excited to see how that one pans out. But even should the Packers lose that game against the Ravens and the Ravens win with their Pro Bowl quarterback, all the Steelers have to do to clinch the division is win in Cleveland against the lowly Cleveland Browns, who are down and don't really have a whole lot going for them. They have a lot of young guys, a lot of interesting young guys on this Browns team. But the main storyline for this game is, of course, going to be Myles Garrett is a half a sack away from the all-time sack record. He's one sack away, pardon me. And it's going to come against the Steelers at home a week before Myles Garrett turns 30. He has a chance to cement himself as one of the best players to ever play the defensive end position with an all-time single-season sack record. That's the type of air that TJ Watt was thrown into whenever he tied the sack record just a couple years ago in 2021. Myles Garrett has that opportunity to do the exact same thing on Sunday, and it could come against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's going to come without the Steelers having TJ Watt on the other side to, kind of combat that. That's been the big rivalry, even though Myles Garrett and TJ Watt never been on the field together at the same time. But that's the main storyline going into this one. And something I thought was really interesting was Brian Batko from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette had a really interesting article that just got posted earlier today. Go check it out. It was more about Myles Garrett on whenever the Browns played the Bears a couple of weeks ago. I didn't catch this on the broadcast, but I believe it was Kevin Burkhardt calling that game. He mentioned that Myles Garrett told them in their meetings that they have with the broadcasters before the game that whenever they play the Steelers, the offensive linemen on the Steelers are told to take the penalty and hold Myles Garrett if he gets close to getting a sack. And, as he gets closer and closer to the sack record, maybe that would come more into play. And that's like such an insane thing to say, but, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. So Brian Batko, credit to him, actually went to Steelers players during their media availability and just said straight up, like, Myles Garrett said this, is this true? Do you guys actually do this? And it was Pat Freiermuth and Spencer Anderson were like, no, we don't do that, in a roundabout way. Both kind of laughed off the question as well. Dylan Cook was also questioned about that, and he, denied it, of course. And that's just kind of an insane thing to say if you're lying about. I don't know why Myles Garrett would lie about something like that. And maybe the Steelers do have a little bit of, hey, we don't want this guy to convert the sack record. We don't want him to have the all-time single-season sack record, especially against us, because our guy who tied the single-season sack record a couple years ago isn't going to play. I think you'd be lying to yourself if you weren't a little like, yeah, the Steelers probably think about that stuff. But what the Steelers have always done really good against Myles Garrett is they've always had help on him. They've always had chip blocks on him. And as good as Dylan Cook has played for the Steelers in relief of Broderick Jones and Andrus Peat over the last couple of weeks, you'd be lying to yourself and saying that you're fully confident in Dylan Cook going up against Myles Garrett when he's going to have the record on his mind. The Browns have absolutely nothing else to play for except this sack record. So that's going to be the main storyline going into this game, as it should. Even though the Steelers are going to maybe clinch the division before this one even starts, even if this is a clinching game for the Steelers, a win and in scenario, the main storyline will be whether or not Myles Garrett records a sack and breaks the all-time single-season record. That's what it's going to be. But again, I think the Steelers did a really good job against Myles Garrett over the last couple of years. The guy who has shut Myles Garrett down the last couple of years, Dan Moore, is obviously with the Tennessee Titans making $50 to $60 million guaranteed. More power to him, more power to the Tennessee Titans, more importantly. But the Steelers are going to have their hands full with Myles Garrett, I think. Again, Dylan Cook has played phenomenal for the Steelers the last couple of weeks. I'd be lying if I said that I'm not a little bit concerned, though. Just a tad bit concerned, because the Steelers' offensive line is a little banged up, and the Steelers' offense in general is going to look very, very different in this one, guys. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But some more general stuff about this game. Of course, we talk about how it's going to be a clinching game for the Steelers. Let's assume, for the sake of the argument, that the Ravens somehow beat the Packers on Saturday, which I guess is entirely possible. Both backup quarterbacks, that game feels like more of a coin flip than anything at this point. Let's say that the Packers lose, right? And the Ravens are still alive. And if the Steelers lose, then, oh no, it's a winner take all week 18 game. I don't mean to scare you guys. The Steelers are 1-5-1 in Cleveland, their last 7 games. 1-5-1 is not good. You don't need me to tell you that. Not a good record whatsoever. Why has it been like that? I don't know. I remember the blizzard last year, but I guess I didn't really take into account because I was looking through the history of this matchup. Guys, it's been all Browns in Cleveland. This is a really tough environment for the Steelers to win in. But again, I think the Steelers are the much better team. I think the Browns are dealing with a whole hell of a lot of injuries. Not that the Steelers aren't. I just think the Browns have the rare case of they have a lot of young guys on their team. They're not really playing for anything other than a sack record at this point, and they have some terrible injuries. Obviously, we saw Quinshon Judkins go down, their standout rookie running back, who was phenomenal for them before he went down and broke his leg and is probably going to be out for quite a while. But I don't know. Cleveland has certainly given Pittsburgh some trouble whenever the game is in Cleveland. And I think that's incredibly notable in a game like this, because we know the Steelers tend to play down to their opponents. But over the last couple of weeks, they really haven't been. Maybe that will scare some fans some more. Because the Steelers have been playing so well over the last couple of weeks. Are they due for a downer like this? I don't know. I do think it's worth mentioning, guys. I tweeted about this yesterday, and I want everybody to understand something. I tweeted out, and I mentioned this in our last video. If you didn't watch that, go ahead. It's why the Steelers can win the AFC. It's a case for the Steelers being a legitimate threat in the AFC conference. And I still think that they are, because I don't know who the hell stands out in the AFC anymore. But when you're looking at the Steelers' 3-game win streak, let's consider who the opponents were. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, who aren't a very good football team right now. Lamar Jackson has a rift with his head coach, and he's been playing injured the entire year. The Ravens, this is a season from hell for them. They went into the season Super Bowl favorites. They're not even going to make the playoffs in all likelihood. Doesn't look good for them. Then, let's consider the Monday night game against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are probably, a middle-of-the-pack team at absolute best. They're not very good. They're a team the Steelers should have manhandled, and they absolutely manhandled them. And then the win against the Lions. And I know that this is easy to say after that Christmas Day loss to Max Brosmer. But guys, let's consider what the Lions are right now. They won 15 games last year. We can get over that. This is a very year-to-year, week-to-week league. And I think that's incredibly fair to say because the Lions lost both of their coordinators and they have a lot of injuries, particularly on the secondary. I said in my Lions preview last week, this could be a game where Aaron Rodgers plays phenomenal, and he probably should. And guess what? He played phenomenal. And the defensive line was banged up. Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell had their best games all season as a 1-2 punch against the Lions. Let's just call what the Lions are. They're not a good football team. They aren't. So, although the Steelers looked really good, and you can't apologize for just playing who's on your schedule and winning, I don't have a vendetta against the Steelers. I'm just calling it what it is, looking at all of these games and saying, man, yeah, these teams really aren't that good. They probably aren't, but they're good wins for the Steelers because at the end of the day, they're going to win the division by default almost, and they shouldn't apologize for that. They should be happy with that. So when I say that the Steelers might be due for a downer, I don't know. I don't think that they are. I think that if this 3-game win streak really means anything, they should be able to win this game pretty handily. And I firmly believe that. I like Shedeur Sanders. I think he's been the best quarterback on the Browns roster since the beginning of the season. And the media coverage of Shedeur Sanders is very odd, as we all know. But I think he's worth taking a shot on even next year if you're Cleveland, unless you get a top 2 pick and you're able to draft a guy like Dante Moore. I think he's worth taking a shot on. I think Shedeur has been spotty with his accuracy, which is a little bit interesting considering Shedeur was pretty good with his accuracy coming out of Colorado. That's something I really liked about him on his when I watched him. I thought he was incredibly accurate. He's also a really good downfield thrower. I mean, nonetheless, the explosive play rate for the Browns skyrocketed whenever Shedeur steps on the field. But we'll go a little bit into injuries now. The Browns are going to be without a lot of guys. And it's, week 17. These teams that are out of the playoffs are, not really playing for anything. So they're more or less shutting guys down. But the Browns really do have some interesting injuries here. David Njoku's out. Dylan Sampson's questionable, who is their backup for Quinshon Judkins. Dylan Gabriel's questionable, but he's a backup. He's not even going to play anyways. But the main one here is Harold Fannin Jr. Popped up with an injury on Friday, suffered a groin injury in practice on Friday. He may or may not play in this one. If he's not playing, that is absolutely huge for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is such a massive loss for the Browns. I love Harold Fannin Jr. I don't know if you guys have paid attention to any Browns games other than the time the Steelers played them really early in the season, but Fannin wasn't super involved then. And if you haven't watched any Browns games, I don't blame you. First off, let me say that. I don't blame you whatsoever. They're a terrible... They're not an easy watch. I'll put it like that. But Harold Fannin, he's got Browns rookie records in catches, receiving yards, and he's got several touchdowns to go along. He's a really dynamic playmaker. I really liked him last year's draft. I thought it was a shame that he fell to day 2. I mean, as far as he did in day 2, at least. I'm not saying he should have been a first-round pick, but he was wildly productive at Bowling Green, and the Browns use him out of the backfield. We saw him get a rushing touchdown last week. He did that kind of stuff at Bowling Green. He's a really, really fun player, and Shedeur has liked to target him quite a lot. So I'm assuming that if their number one target's not on the field, that bodes even better for the Steelers. Now we'll get into a little bit of the Steelers' injuries, who's in, who's out. TJ Watt did return to practice on Wednesday for the Steelers, and he logged limited practices Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I think it's the right move. The Steelers declared TJ Watt out at the time of this recording. He's not going to play again. I don't blame them whatsoever. I really don't. For me, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. It was always about getting TJ Watt fully healthy, back on the field, ease him in, especially in a game where you might not even be playing for anything if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. No reason to rush TJ Watt back. I would assume if this game means anything for the Steelers week 18, if it's a winner-take-all against the Baltimore Ravens week 18, I can almost guarantee you TJ Watt will be out there. But I think because of the position the Steelers are in, it's allowed them to take extreme caution with TJ Watt, which I think will help them massively in the playoffs. I really think it will. Now, some good news. Nick Herbig is going to be back on the field for the Steelers. Nick Herbig is one of my favorite players on this football team. I'll keep saying it. I'll keep singing his praises. Guy's been phenomenal. And as pleasantly surprised as I was with Jack Sawyer on the field against the Detroit Lions last week, I'm very happy to have Nick Herbig back out. I'd still like Jack Sawyer to get some more snaps and rotate him in. I think he will, with Herbig being back, but maybe not at 110%, I'd say. I'd like to get Jack Sawyer some snaps. I think he's, after his performance, I think he's deserving of that, especially if we're not playing for anything in this one. I'll talk about that a little bit. What if the Steelers don't even have to play for anything on Sunday? I think the starters are still going to play in this. Mike Tomlin said that will change his plans if the Steelers aren't playing for anything in his Tuesday press conference. But I would still expect the starters to play for at least the first half. I think Aaron Rodgers will get at least a full half, probably a full game. A lot of the running backs, they don't really have any receivers to speak of that are playing at least on Sunday, as Calvin Austin's out for this one. And we'll get into what that offense is going to look like without DK and Calvin Austin in a moment here. But I would expect a lot of the starters to get some run, at least in the first half. But if the Steelers get up in this one and they're not really playing for anything, and it's the second half, you can reasonably expect some backups to be in this one, I think. I really think you could. And I'll say this. I know there's some very big Will Howard fans out there. I'm sure there are some very big Will Howard fans that are listening to this right now. And I think the Steelers would greatly benefit from giving Will Howard a start in Week 18 as compared to Mason Rudolph. Nothing against Mason Rudolph, but I think I would like to see Will Howard. I think I speak for everybody when I say that I am pro starting Will Howard Week 18 if the Steelers are not playing for anything. I think that would be a lot of fun. Give the guy some reps. Give the guy a chance. Why not? Go out there Week 18, have a little bit of fun. It would certainly get the crowd into it. It would make the game much more watchable, even though they're not playing for anything, if they start Will Howard. But another really tough set of injuries for the Steelers. Brandon Echols is out in this one. James Pierre is also out in this one. Doesn't look good for the Steelers. That corner room is very thin. It's very, very, very thin. As we knew, the Steelers made a lot of moves in the offseason to go out and get some of those guys. Darius Slay's not on the team anymore. Brandon Echols is banged up. James Pierre has been banged up for the last couple of games. And I think, again, because of the position the Steelers are in, they're not rushing any of these guys back from injuries. I don't blame them. But it's going to be Trey Flowers out there. Probably, I don't know how much he's going to play. I'd assume a little bit at least in that slot corner position for Pittsburgh. And Trey Flowers, I don't know. If you're going out there and having a lot of confidence in him, more power to you. But the Steelers are definitely banged up in the secondary. And I don't think that will be the worst thing in the world, considering Cleveland has some issues throwing the ball down the field. I mentioned Shedeur. Their explosive play rate's very good with Shedeur ever since he took over. But I don't think that you have to worry about Shedeur bombing it down the field quite often on you, especially considering the play of Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar has been great. It's been a very solid safety duo. A room that I was admittedly incredibly concerned about going into the season, and even towards the midway point of the season when they had to move Ramsey back to safety. That room has come together really nicely, and it's a nice little thing on this team. I think it's been good about that. So lots of injuries on both ends. And I mentioned Calvin Austin being out in this one. That is the Steelers' top two receivers in theory. Calvin Austin, in theory, is the Steelers' wide receiver too. That's your top two receivers that are out. So this offense is going to look a lot different. And because of the nature of this game, I think you'll see the Steelers be incredibly conservative. I think you'll see them run the ball a lot, and that worked for them last week. But I think the Browns' defensive line is incredibly, incredibly better than the Detroit Lions at this point. And I don't think anybody would disagree with me. I think they're going to have a little bit of a tougher time running the ball. Maybe not. I'm not acting like Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren won't be productive. They'll certainly get their touches and get their own. But I think it'll be a little bit of tougher sledding, and I think the Steelers are okay with that. I think the Steelers are perfectly okay with making this a 17-10 slugfest. And I don't mean to give away my score prediction, but I think it's going to be a low-scoring, slug-it-out type of game, given the Browns are without probably their most dynamic playmaker on offense, maybe their two best dynamic playmakers on offense in Quinshon Judkins and Harold Fannin Jr., who may or may not play in this one. If the Browns are without both of those guys, it's going to be really tough because David Njoku's out too. It's going to have to be Jerry Jeudy who steps up. Maybe a little bit of Cedric Tillman if you're into Cedric Tillman. I don't know. Point being, guys, for the Cleveland Browns, it's going to be not good for them, especially offensively. So the Steelers defensively, what they can do, Nick Herbig is going to be back on the field, so that's going to be good. Obviously, they're going to be able to get some more consistent pressure, and pressure wasn't an issue last week like I thought it would be against the Detroit Lions. It was Jack Sawyer and it was Alex Highsmith, and Highsmith played phenomenal in that one. So I think as far as getting pressure goes, it's going to be a little bit easier. I think security on the back end might be a little bit different than usual, but I'm not expecting the Browns to be able to push it down the field like I mentioned. So overall, I think the offense for the Steelers, without DK Metcalf and without Calvin Austin, it's going to be a little bit weird. As we know, I think I encapsulated perfectly what the Arthur Smith offense was on the last episode of The Standard when I broke down the Lions game. I think it was a perfect way to kind of explain things here. Arthur Smith's done a phenomenal job this year, but it certainly hasn't been pretty by any stretch of the imagination. The offense, I think Arthur Smith's done a phenomenal job given the people that he has been given to work with. He's got one highly paid receiver and a couple of tight ends who, I mean, they all have different skill sets, and Darnell Washington's been great, but he's kind of moving them all around, and I like the way he's doing it. But it's not easy on the eyes. You know what I'm saying, guys? I don't expect it to be easy on the eyes anytime soon or for the rest of the season, but what it does is it works. It is perfect for Aaron Rodgers. It perfectly encapsulates all of his skills and what he's able to do, especially at this point in his career. And I think that while you may see a little bit different stuff, a little bit more conservative, more maybe not so much down the field stuff as we've seen in recent weeks, I think it's going to be enough to get the job done. Because I think Aaron Rodgers is really hitting his stride and playing the best quarterback. He's the best quarterbacking that the Steelers have had in the last couple of years, and the best quarterback that Aaron Rodgers has played as for the last couple of years, if that makes sense to you guys. Aaron Rodgers is playing at a really high level, and that bodes well for the Steelers as they push for the playoffs. So overall, guys, I think it's going to be a low-scoring slugfest. I wouldn't expect many fireworks. Roman Wilson's going to get a helmet by default almost at this point. So Roman Wilson, boys, stand back and stand by. I don't know how much I reasonably expect him to get involved, but I'd like to see him go out there and catch a few passes. That would be nice. That would be very much nice. We're going to see Adam Thielen and Marquez Valdez-Scantling pay dividends for this team, hopefully. So, all things considered, I think the Steelers win this game 17-10. I alluded to it earlier. I don't think it's going to be crazy. I don't think it's going to be crazy scoring. I think the Steelers are just going to do what they have to do, take care of business. Maybe we'll see some backups in the second half, should the Steelers already have the division locked up, but I don't know that I can even expect that. Let me know what you guys think of this game in the comments down below. Who's going to win? What's going to be the key to victory for the Steelers? I really enjoy reading all the comments, and I really enjoy doing this. So we'll be back Sunday night after the game, recapping this game, breaking it down, giving you all the latest news inside of the world of our Pittsburgh Steelers. I hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas, and I'll see you guys soon.